The crystalline spires of the Dragon Empress's palace pierced the crimson sky of Zerath Prime like frozen lightning. Within those gleaming walls, 13 ambassadors had entered over the past solar cycle. None had emerged alive. The Galactic Council's peace negotiations had become a graveyard of diplomacy, and every species in the known galaxy whispered the same warning. Never meet her gaze directly. Never speak unless spoken to. Never ever show weakness. Kanat wiped his oil-stained hands on his coveralls and stared up at those impossible towers. He wasn't an ambassador. He wasn't even supposed to be here. He was just a mechanic from the Outer Rim colonies, someone who fixed broken hyperdrives and jury-rigged life support systems with spare parts and stubborn determination. But when his transport ship had suffered catastrophic engine failure in Zerath's orbital space, he'd become an unwilling visitor to the Dragon Empress's domain. "You cannot be serious," Malice had said when the docking bay supervisor informed them of the protocol. The young communications officer had turned pale beneath her regulation uniform. "The Empress demands to personally approve any unscheduled landings. But we're just refugees from a mechanical failure." The supervisor, a reptilian Zerathi with scales that shifted color when he spoke, had merely shrugged. "Imperial law is absolute. You will be escorted to the throne room within the hour." Now, as guards flanked them through corridors lined with bones of previous guests, Kanat found himself oddly calm. Maybe it was because he'd spent so many years elbow-deep in the guts of machines that death had become familiar. Every hyperdrive malfunction was a potential funeral pyre. Every reactor instability was a dance with annihilation. Fear was just another system diagnostic to be acknowledged and then ignored. The throne room doors opened with a sound like grinding mountains. She was magnificent and terrible. The Dragon Empress sat upon a throne carved from a single massive crystal, her scaled form easily 3 times the height of a human. Her wings, folded against the high back of her seat, bore membrane patterns that seemed to shift and writhe in the chamber's dim light. Most terrifying of all were her eyes, ancient, intelligent, and burning with an inner fire that suggested she had personally incinerated every previous visitor. Malice dropped to one knee immediately, her training kicking in, but Kanat remained standing, not out of disrespect but because he was staring at something else entirely. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice cutting through the chamber's oppressive silence. "Your thermal regulation system is failing." The Empress's massive head tilted slightly, a gesture that had preceded the deaths of many. "Explain," Kanat pointed to the base of her throne. "The crystal's internal lattice structure. It's designed to channel and dissipate excess body heat, isn't it? But look at the stress fractures forming along the 3rd and 7th resonance points. The harmonic frequency is destabilizing. You're probably experiencing temperature spikes, fatigue, maybe even pain in your wing joints." For the first time in centuries, the Dragon Empress looked genuinely surprised. "The previous ambassadors," Kanat continued, warming to his subject, "they probably attributed your aggressive responses to natural territorial behavior. But you weren't angry. You were in pain. Constant low-level pain that would make anyone irritable." The Empress rose from her throne, her massive form casting shadows that danced like flames across the walls. Malice whimpered softly, certain they were about to die, but Kanat stepped forward, pulling a small diagnostic tool from his belt. "May I?" he asked, as casually as if he were requesting permission to check under the hood of a ground car. What happened next would be debated in xenobiological circles for decades. The Dragon Empress, sovereign ruler of 12 systems and terror of the known galaxy, lowered her great head and allowed a human mechanic to run his scanner along the base of her throne. "Just as I thought," Kanat muttered, reading the display. "The resonance frequency has shifted by 12% over the past year. Probably started as a minor irritation and gradually got worse. The crystal needs recalibration, and I'm betting it's been so long since proper maintenance that everyone who knew how to fix it is long dead." "The throne was crafted by the ancients," the Empress said, her voice now carrying curiosity rather than menace. "The knowledge of its construction was lost millennia ago." Kanat grinned, the same expression he wore when facing a particularly challenging repair job. "Well, Your Majesty, I've got good news. Ancient or not, every machine follows the same basic principles. Heat, pressure, resonance, material stress. These are universal constants. Give me a few hours and access to your maintenance archives, and I'll have this old girl purring like a kitten." The Dragon Empress stared at him for a long moment. Then, impossibly, she began to laugh. It started as a low rumble that made the floor vibrate, building into something that was pure joy rather than menace. "Human," she said, settling back onto her throne with obvious relief as Kanat began making preliminary adjustments. "What is your name?" "Kanat, Your Majesty. Ship's mechanic, 3rd class." "Kanat," she repeated as if testing the sound. "Tell me, do all humans possess this peculiar ability to see machines where others see only mystery?" Kanat paused in his work, considering the question seriously. "Not all, Your Majesty. But most of us, when we see something broken, we want to fix it. It's just how we're built." 3 hours later, as the throne's crystal matrix hummed with perfect resonance for the first time in centuries, the Dragon Empress signed a comprehensive peace treaty with the Galactic Council. The negotiations that had stalled for years were completed in minutes, conducted with a ruler who was no longer in constant pain. As Kanat and Malice prepared to board their repaired ship, the Empress approached them in the docking bay. In her claws she carried a small crystal pendant, for the human who saw not a monster to be feared, but a machine to be repaired, she said, pressing the gift into Kanat's oil-stained hands. "May your species never lose this gift." Later, as their ship jumped to hyperspace, Malice finally found her voice. "How did you know? How did you see what 13 trained diplomats missed?" Kanat shrugged, already turning his attention to a fluctuation in the ship's power distribution grid. "Simple. They were all looking for a political solution to a political problem. But sometimes the most complex situations have the simplest answers. Sometimes all you need is someone willing to get their hands dirty and fix what's broken." In the depths of space, their ship's engines hummed with perfect efficiency, carrying them home with a story that would reshape how the galaxy viewed humanity, not as the strongest or smartest species, but as the one that refused to accept that anything was beyond repair. After all, that's what humans do. They fix things,